It's not here. I'm looking for Wyman's book, Abandonment of the Jews.
Well, what do you see your purpose as now?
Same purpose. Our purpose is very simple, to defend and safeguard the rights and interests of the Jewish people throughout the world. And that changes, of course. That is to say, the international Jewish agenda changes with each historic period.
There's been a very strong attack upon yourselves and the whole restitution process by Norman Finkelstein recently. What's your views about it?
Frankly, Mr. Finkelstein's views are warped. And I've told him this after he phoned me, after he wrote his book. He is engaged in what I can only describe as the big lie. And I don't use that term casually. At the heart of his thesis, I think, one of his main arguments is that the effort towards Holocaust restitution is little more than extortion in order to enrich Jewish organizations. I think that's one of his central theses. And he makes the charge in his book that the World Jewish Congress Treasury has amassed $7 billion. As they used to say here, there was a famous manager of the New York Yankees called Casey Stengel. He would always say, you could look it up. Well, you could look it up in his book. And I challenged him on this, because let me begin by saying, it ain't so. Period. Full stop. And he cited as his source a reference in a German newspaper which said this. And he believes he's a scholar?
But it's not that there shouldn't be restitution. That's not what you're saying.
I find that a funny question because there's nobody who fought harder for restitution than I did. I devoted maybe 20 years to fighting for my mother's restitution. What I oppose is not restitution. I oppose, number one, demanding money on false pretexts. What was done to the Swiss bankers was simply extortion. It was a fraud. And number two, once you've gotten the monies, then to deny it to the actual victims, well, that's just shameless.
I think he's raising some very important and legitimate questions. Like how much of the money that various Jewish organizations are collecting around the world, from the Swiss, from the Germans, and everywhere else, really reaches the survivors.
Mr. Finkelstein wants to deny the number of survivors that are alive. And he wants to argue that the Holocaust is an industry, and that those victims that are still alive seeking restitution, that is not restitution, it's extortion, because Jewish organizations are taking the money. But the World Jewish Congress is not taking the money. It's one of those old things where, well, don't bother me with the facts, it doesn't fit into my thesis.
These organizations, that they are self-appointed, and besides this, they claim they are entitled to the airless properties and the airless thing. Who appointed this? This is I mean, I can't even say words that this is.
Some would argue, and it's not something that can be dismissed easily, that this is justice. What was ours belongs to us. But ours is a very, very ambivalent relationship. What do you mean ours? The Holocaust, the victims are mine. I have a right to claim in their name. The State of Israel has a right to claim in their name. The American Jewish Congress has a right to claim in their name. The American government has a right to claim in their name. I don't remember ever seeing, an authorization.
There was, from the beginning, an understanding that, first of all, many families, indeed many communities, were completely wiped out without a trace. Secondly, entire institutions were also wiped out, decimated, so that the notion of, if you will, reparations, not just to individuals but to institutions, is a legitimate one.
Does that mean that you, the Wiesenthal Center, might benefit as well from some of this?
I think we might. I'm not exactly, I would say, I can tell you definitively that we're not exactly at the front of the line.
I am a great believer that a certain portion of assets should be used for purposes of remembrance. And therefore, I accept that position, although I believe that there is a debate in that regard. But I do again want to stress that the World Jewish Congress, as a political body, does not accept restitution funds. We do not believe it should be given to Jewish organizations. And as far as we have been concerned, it is not.
So like that plate we saw up there, this is a new monument, memorial for Roma and Sinti people. So you can see that in English the term Holocaust is used, in German not Holocaust but Völkermord. So this was mentioned already in the GDR time, but like Elie Wiesel and others who came here from Auschwitz in the very end, were not mentioned in that perspective. So therefore, another monument for all the Jewish victims was recognized. Their bodies were mostly burned to ashes in that crematorium, and it became visible for the prisoners that their way out of the camp should go through the chimney.
From Norway in the north to Greece in the south, thousands of concentration camps spread across Europe. Helmno, Sobibor, Belzec, Treblinka, Majdanek, and Auschwitz-Birkenau.
What was the role of the Jews in Europe for 2,000 years? They are the group that's both inside and outside of European culture. They're not Christian, but they're clearly Europeans in the sense of living there and acquiring its science, its languages, its values. Insiders, outsiders, killing people who are making ritual victims. We haven't all figured that out, and Joseph Campbell died before he could get to the Holocaust. It's one of his archetypal myths, and Jung died before he could make it one. But it would repay analysis in that sense.